All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board, for the board. We hope you enjoy. Welcome to episode 62 of the KissFAQ podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Julian, the admin on the FAQ board. Joining me today, Marcus Almighty, Lonnie, St. Louis Kiss, and Ken, 69th Blizzard. Welcome back, gentlemen. It's good to see you on Friday. So, we are going to get to the second part of a topic that we left unfinished some time ago. And I was going to look up what episode it was, but I forgot. And that's just how my day's rolling. So
there is a lot of show prep involved for this show. Don't fool yourself. To do podcasting at this level, just about anyone can do.
Yeah, you know what? You out there could do your own. So let's get on to this topic. We're going to do part 2 of the best Kiss co-writers. And I think in the last episode, we made it as far as the end of the makeup era with Creatures. And do correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm often wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
And we'd kind of, I guess what was the consensus on that one? That Ezrin was the most useful co-writer for the originals period.
Yeah.
I think so. And there was a couple of, I guess maybe, a couple of people who mentioned Vinny, but I think that was more just to taunt a few,
Yeah, Vinny only co-wrote 3 songs on Creatures, so he really doesn't have his own. Bob had, of course, co-written a lot of stuff on The Elder, which makes him an automatic winner for the award of greatest co-writer, and of course Destroyer. And I think my choice had been Stan Penridge, who had done a lot of the kind of the more classic-y type stuff in that era. But let's get in. We're now into the 80s. Off comes the makeup, and you get to see Vinny in all his glory. And Lick It Up comes out, and he has a co-write on, 9 of the 10 songs. The only exception being...
Fits Like a Glove?
Yeah, Fits Like a Glove and Dance All Over Your Face. So 8 out of 10. 80% co-write level. Vinnie Vincent, welcome to the band. Lonnie, what's your thoughts on Vinny co-writing on this album?
Lick It Up gets a lot of praise from a lot of Kiss fans, saying it's their favorite non-makeup album, and that people love Creatures, and people often say as well that Lick It Up picked up where Creatures left off. And if you like this era of the band, well, Vinnie Vincent is responsible for, like you said, Julian, 80% of the songs on there, and a lot of songs that they can, they played Lick It Up live, obviously, and they still do. And they played Million to One. That's a great song. And Fits Like a Glove, they played that for the whole through the 80s, but Vinny didn't have the co-write on that. But it's a great album. And Exciter, people always talk about how they want to hear Exciter live again, to bring back some things from that. And Vinny is all over this album, and I mean, like him or not, he has his demons, there's no doubt, but he is a talented songwriter. You can't deny that, no matter how much he has issues off stage. But you got to give props to him for this album. There's no doubt.
Vinny has issues. Don't destroy my dream, man.
Well, no. I heard a rumor this week about Pink Feathers and.
Oh god. Yeah, pink feathers, peeing on guitars, all that sort of thing. Yeah, he's special in all sorts of special way. What I like about Vinny on this album, and I was absolutely blown away when I first heard Lick It Up, because it seemed to be a real paradigm shift in the lyrical department. All of a sudden, Vinny's like his fingerprints all over there. I mean, "Gimme More" is a great example of all those little, kind of phrases that Gene would write in his volumes of notebooks that never get used. Well, here are the ones that do get used out of Vinny's notebook. I mean, come on, look at my candy cane. It's I mean, that's just a great one. But maybe mine's in the gutter. So, that's what I like about the whole album. And Exciter, it's just the lyrics really change the songs, and obviously his guitar playing, you get an essence of him. That he's kind of restrained and fitting into the mold at this point, whereas the stuff on Creatures doesn't really count in that he's just a hired hand, and they said, okay, we're going to use your songs. So here he is now as more of a part of the band, and they're taking everything he's offering, including the recycling the stuff from Warrior, taking riffs, taking lyrics, taking whatever. I mean, they're almost hanging him upside down by his ankles and shaking him until he's empty and saying, give up the goods, Vinny. And at that point, I guess he was willing, because he was a nobody, in essence. Ken, what are your thoughts on Lick It Up and Vinny as a co-writer?
I think it's fantastic. It was a real shot in the arm that they needed. Even though Creatures was a great album, Lick It Up was just another step in the right direction. And his mark is left all over Lick It Up. And I would almost say that this could be Vinnie Vincent's first solo album with Kiss backing him in a way, because he left so much of his music in all of the songs, and it's just his style. And then merged with Kiss, it just became a great thing. It just, raised the level for Gene Simmons, the way he sings on the album, and Paul Stanley. You can tell the difference. And it just reinvigorated the band. And it's one thing, Vinny, great songwriter. Great, probably musician, of course, too. But it's just too bad we don't see him these days.
Yeah, it's a loss. I mean, 20 years really have gone by without anything out of Vinny whatsoever, which is really disappointing.
I think the last picture we've even seen of Vinny was his mugshot.
Yeah, that
was
is
several years ago.
Yeah, and that was an improvement on the previous last picture. It was him in the loafers holding the posters back for Kiss World. So it just seems like a terrible waste. But Mark, from a musical perspective, does Vinny raise the whole band's game? Do you think they step up as a result of him? And what are your thoughts on Lick It Up?
Definitely, I think there's no doubt that I think Lick It Up is Vinny's crowning achievement as far as songwriting goes. I mean, he's been noted as claiming that he's only shown 20% of his potential when he was with Kiss. But if that's 20%, I think it's just best that he stay at that 20%, because when he went beyond it, it was just hideous in spots. But I think that he did a great job. I mean, this is another great example of chemistry. I mean, you may not like the person on a personal level, but there's something about Vinny as a songwriter that he just works well with people like Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, and brought out some of the more standout songs that they still play today and that people love. I mean, Lick It Up, like we all said, is a record that people still talk about and still love and listen to this day. And I mean, besides just the songwriting, I think the moons were sort of aligned for this record. I mean, Michael James Jackson there did a great job producing it. And I mean, Dave Whitman, again, I think was engineer and mixed it. And, all those things combined with great songs make for a great record. So I think Lick It Up benefited not only from Vinny's writing and his great guitar playing, but, from all those other little avenues that helped take the song and just project it that much more stronger.
Yeah, sonically and in terms of production and the overall sound of a complete album, it's one of the most pleasing to my ears. And I think you raise a really good point on 20% of Vinnie Vincent is probably a better idea than allowing him 100%. And I'm going to give an example that doesn't exactly relate to Lick It Up specifically, though parts do. Take the Warrior version of Boys Are Gonna Rock, listen to that, and then listen to the Vinnie Vincent Invasion version, and then kind of there's your 20%, the restrained Warrior version, which is very rock, and then there is the Attack of the Killer Bees. Just too much Vinny is not a good thing, and that's what's really excellent about this album, that he's not in a position to overrule Gene and Paul. but Gene and Paul are milking him for everything he's worth on the album, and it's all working out very nicely. So, Vinny, by far, I mean, it's absolutely stunning, the songwriting that he provides on this album. And you can kind of tell where it is. You can see where the ideas are coming from Gene and Paul and are being buttressed by his input, because he's very obvious. So, great album. And then we move on to Animalize, and it's all downhill from there. I'm going to admit straight up that Animalize is one of my least favorite albums of the 80s. However, it's grown on me a lot in recent years. In the 80s, I listened to it a few times and then basically cut 3 songs off it and put it on a play mix or play tape, whatever the hell it was called, and never went back to it. Here we get, it's like Creatures all over again, that it's a real hodgepodge, a mix of different writers. You get the introduction of Jean Beauvoir from the Plasmatics. You get Desmond Child rearing his head again. But I think the most important co-writer on this one's Mitch, and that is, of course, Weissman. He comes in with 3 co-writing credits, 2 with Gene, one with Paul. So, Animalize, thoughts on that, Lonnie?
I had Animalize very early on cassette, and I really liked it back then as a young kid. But today, it's one of those albums that I kind of with you, Julian, that I probably listened to the least out of any of the Kiss albums. If I'm going to throw on a Kiss album, it's not going to be Animalize. The only time I'll hear an Animalize song most of the time is if I have a Kiss type playlist or something like that going, and Heaven's on Fire will come up. But and I do like, I've had enough Into the Fire. I think Desmond Child did a great job on that and Heaven's on Fire. Well, the first two songs on the album I think are very good. I think Desmond Child did an excellent job co-writing both of those with Paul Stanley. And we all know what was going on with the band at this time when Animalize came out, with Gene focusing more on crappy movies and leaving Paul to the reins of the band. And even Gene's co-writes with Mitch Weissman are really rough, in my opinion. While the City Sleeps, Murder in High Heels don't do it for me. Sorry, at all. And even Get All You Can Take it's not all bad. I mean, I'll give that a listen here and there. That's not all bad, but I'm not a big. But to say it's not all bad isn't exactly singing its praises either. Under the Gun isn't something that gets me fired up for either. Desmond Child isn't something that, like, you don't hear people saying, "Oh, why don't they bring back Under the Gun" or something like that. It's just not there. And then Booyah on Thrills in the Night isn't bad either. It's not bad, but it's not anything, again, to get excited about. So I think it's a very lackluster album and very much of a step back from what you had gotten the 2 previous years with Creatures and Lick It Up. And that's not a hot take or anything like that to say that Animalize is a step back from what they were doing, because I think we're all going to agree that Julian alluded to it when we started talking about the album, that it was downhill from there. So I know they brought in some different co-writers, but it doesn't do
too many co-writers, perhaps, in this sense, especially when Gene's, I guess his stuff is the stuff that really lets us down, and maybe his is the stuff that really needed Vinnie Vincent, to give it the quality boost. But, Mitch Weissman's style doesn't seem to work for songs on a Kiss album here. It's almost like those songs, particularly the 2 with Gene, should have been shopped to other bands, because tempo-wise, they're not the sort of tempo for Kiss. Mark, what's your take on these co-writers, this whole gaggle of them on Animalize?
Well, it's interesting. We all seem to have this perspective that it's all kind of downhill from here. But the interesting point of the whole thing is that this is one of the first records in a long time that went platinum for them. So, I mean, it may have went downhill from here in our eyes, but in the general publics at that time. It certainly didn't. But there's a few things in here I found kind of interesting. One, the obvious inclusion of, the extra writers, which is not new for Kiss at all, but going from a record before where there was actually probably like nobody, just Vinny and the band doing this in songs, to having a record where there's 3 outside writers was a change in dynamic. Another change in dynamic too was gone is the producer, and in steps in Paul Stanley, and we know how that starts happening later on as well. And this is something that I think that people started not liking as much. I think the outside real producer was the way that they should have stuck, and having Paul come in, produce it, while it did good, the record, I think it was starting to show, a little bit of weakness in the sound. I don't think it sounds as good as Lick It Up, nor, Creatures, this record. But, thank God for Heaven's on Fire. It was the big single. It pushed it, and it made, everybody aware of Kiss still. And, they were able to, produce a platinum record because of it. But the writing, I don't think the co-writers helped in this instant. I mean, the big song was, Heaven's on Fire, right? And it was just basically Desmond Child and Paul Stanley for that, right? I mean, if they would have just kept maybe with just Desmond for the rest of the record, maybe it would have been better if they just kept it with just one extra writer instead of bringing in a bunch of other people. But I think that a few things changed for it. And while we all think now, as years have gone by, that it doesn't do the trick as much as Lick It Up, at that moment when it came out, people thought different. It was like I said, it was a platinum record. I know when I read Chris Lent's book, the record label was very pleased that they were selling that well. I mean, and even promoters they were starting to add secondary markets on their tour for that tour because they were doing much better because of sales. So, it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and you just raised an interesting point. I just had to Google it quickly because, Desmond Child, it doesn't have to co-write every song on an album for it to be successful. I just wanted to look up Slippery When Wet as an example, and he only co-wrote 4 songs on that album. So, just the importance of the co-writer, is not necessarily the key to the success of an album. One other thing I wanted to quickly touch on before I go to Ken, and sorry, Ken, keeping you waiting there. Animalize, I really feel, is a beneficiary of the success of Lick It Up and The Unmasking, rather than, its near double platinum status having anything to do with with Animalize itself. I think it has more to do with the knock-on effect of the previous album, that it was just a solid thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lonnie, you look like you
and the success of the Heaven's on Fire video too, I think, really spawned a lot of album sales. You got to remember, in 1984 that MTV was really becoming king of. It wasn't just important to have a good single, but it was important, just as, if not more important, to have a good video at that point in time. And say what you want about the video, but the video was really big on MTV, and that videos were at the time were spawning a lot of album sales too.
Yeah, and the video's fun. It's just the album in terms of packaging. Look at that cover. I mean, that's like The Elder in terms of the amount of effort that goes into getting some animalistic throw rugs down and taking a picture of them, or building a door.
It's like for the album cover. Here, let's get some throw rugs, put them together, take the picture. Okay, let's do lunch.
Yeah. So not one of my favorites. Ken, kept you waiting. So what's your thoughts on?
That's all right. Well, I agree actually with you, Julian, and Lonnie a bit. I think they did have momentum going from Creatures to Lick It Up, and then Animalize. And Lick It Up was a pretty good song, a pretty big song on that album. And then now Heaven's on Fire is similar in a way in style to that, and that's what really, I think, sold the album, Heaven's on Fire, because really about 50% of this album is good, and the other 50% is pretty much not very good. So,
percent's being nice.
And Desmond Child is good to bring in. I think he probably, if you look at it this way, 33% of the time he writes with you, you might get a hit. So not every song he writes with you is going to be a hit. So probably third of the time, one out of everything. It's pretty not too bad. If you get him to write a few songs with you, you might have one hit. So, and then Mitch Weissman, those songs there, except for I like "Get All You Can Take." I've always loved that song. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's a Stanley song more than Wiseman, I would guess too. But the ones at the end, which is probably the right place to put those two songs, "While the City Slips" and "Murder in High Heels," those two are another case of unfinished songs where they could have been better. They could have done some things and made them a more complete song.
And Gene's "Lonely as the Hunter" and "Burn Bitch Burn" both could have used a co-writer who should have said, "Gene, these aren't good songs. Don't use them." Dreadful stuff. So I guess is there a consensus that Desmond Child is the co-writer of note on this album? Rather, does he beat Mitch?
Yeah, and this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sorry, Mitch, didn't work out this time. So moving on, and I'm actually just going through the website while I'm doing this because I can't remember these co-writers off the top of my head. So
I got them written. So for Asylum, next we have Desmond Child, Howard Rice, Gene Bouvier, Rod Svensson, and Wes Beach.
I refuse to accept that, accept that as a co-write. So let's start with Jean again, because on this album, he's 1/3 responsible for one of my all-time favorite Kiss songs. So that's "Who Wants to Be Lonely," and that is, of course, this is all coming back to the period of, when I became a fan, and these videos were in a lot of rotation on MTV, which Lonnie just reminded us, the importance. Yeah, there you go. What's that? All Night.
Who Wants to Be Lonely?
That was one of your favorite Kiss.
Yes, Who Wants to Be Lonely?
Yeah, I can't tell the difference between the videos. So.
I thought you were going to say That was one of your top 3 Kiss songs.
No.
Here, I can make that really easy.
The 14 in me does remember the Twins, but on this album again, it's a hodgepodge of co-writers. I mean, I've never figured out the Howard Rice connection with that. So it's more about Desmond Child again, who has 4 co-writes on this album, and it's pretty bottom of the barrel to be perfectly frank when you can compare the quality of his work even on Animalize. Songs like "Radar for Love" are just not particularly good, to me.
And Julian loves Asylum, remember?
Yeah, and I love Asylum, but the quality, comparatively, "I'm Alive," no. But he absolutely hits it out of the ballpark with "King of the Mountain." So, and "Who Wants to Be Lonely?" He's, the other co-write. So you have, Desmond Child is a good addition on this album, as is Jean. So, Lonnie, thoughts on Asylum?
I think you said it about Desmond Child and his contributions on the album. "King of the Mountain" is fantastic. It's one of my favorite Kiss songs. Definitely one of my favorite Kiss songs from the 80s. Just the way that kicks off. They can't play that song now, though, unfortunately, with Paul Stanley's vocal range. But can you imagine, even on a Kiss cruise or something, they just started out and just Eric Singer did that drum intro and they went in "The King of the Mountain," the crowd would go berserk. But
yeah, and I think Eric Singer could sing that easily.
No, that's a good. That'd be interesting too. They could pull it off, but they couldn't do it on an arena tour or a shed tour or something because a fraction of the people that are there would even know the song today. Honestly, it would go over like a fart in church or something for most of the people there. But it'd be awesome to hear it. It's one of my favorite Kiss songs from the 80s, like I said. But the other co-writes on there, Bouvier though with "Who Wants to Be Lonely," I'm with you there. You gotta remember that MTV was huge and that spawned a lot of success of Asylum again, like it did for Animalize. But that's a great song. That's also one of my favorites too. So as much as I give Julian crap about Asylum, 2 of my favorite Kiss songs from the 80s, or 2 of my favorite Kiss songs period, do appear on Asylum with "King of the Mountain" and "Who Wants to Be Lonely." So,
but here's the real head scratcher. It took Paul Stanley Desmond Child,
It's a little
and Jean
strange.
Bouvier to write All
Two
Night.
co-writers that come
Oh
up
my
with Who Wants to
god!
Be.
It took that many people. I mean, that's like one of these modern rap songs that's written by 18 people and only uses 4 words. I mean,
Great.
all that's missing from All Night is having 3 different producers. So,
Well, but Love's a Deadly Weapon has 4 on that.
yeah, but that's 2 different songs. So,
I know.
That's why I refuse to accept it as a co-write, because
4 people that come up with that.
No, it wasn't.
Gem.
It wasn't 4 people who came up with it. It is they took someone else's song and said, we're going to use this part of it on our song, and
Schooling me.
yeah, well, the original version of Party is on Wendy's second album, so Commander of Chaos, and you can just see what they borrowed, and they gave them credit, so it's all legit, and they made Deadly Weapons. I don't think it needed much doing to it, because I like the original demo, but it's just the marriage of 2 different songs rather than a co-write. So, Ken, your thoughts on Asylum?
Yeah, a lot of co-writers. Again, Child is there, does a great job. Something that we didn't mention yet is, we got Bruce Kulick, contributing on 3 songs, I think, here. So he's starting to, give some input, which is I think a good thing. Especially like a song like maybe Trial by Fire, helping Gene maybe finish up some stuff that he wouldn't normally complete on his own. And then there's, what's the other one? I'm Alive. And that's with Child too, and Stanley. So, and he did that also with King of the Mountain. So I think those 3 there together wrote some pretty good stuff. And it's good that I think Gene had a little more help here, because his material on Asylum is better than, obviously much better than what was on Animalize. So it was a good thing.
Sorry.
That's okay. It sounded like you were moving your desk.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Sorry, Ken, we weren't laughing at you.
No, it's all right.
Mark, you're up with your thoughts on Asylum.
Well, Asylum is one of those records where I'm going to be a bit biased on it, because it is my favorite non-makeup album. So to me, you can't really do too much wrong with this record in my eyes. I know that's probably going to be laughed at by many people, but
Kissing up.
I know Julian's in my corner for this at least, but
Yep.
but it's, again, to me, they took what they did on Animalize and hope to kind of continue and move forward, and hope for the same sort of success where as much as this didn't sell as much, it still is. I think it is a platinum album when it was all said and done. So it's not that bad. I think. I mean, it did have 3 singles, which was, pretty good for a record of that time period. Desmond Child, I think, as a writer, again, showed his strength. I think mainly he's more contributes lyrically as far as songs go. I mean, I know he always comes up with little melody ideas as well. I mean, I remember hearing them talking about him during a Bon Jovi sort of song analyses where he said he brought up a melody that was similar to Billie Jean that ended up being the riff for You Give Love a Bad Name. If you think about it, it's the same thing. Do 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 do. That bass line in Billie Jean is the same thing as You Give Love a Bad Name. And he pretty much scooped that out and gave it to them and said, hey, why don't we just do that? And bam, they had a single. So, I mean, he kind of has a pulse on what connects with people, I think. And I think that's Desmond Child's main thing as a writer, is that he knows what clicks with people and how to make it work with other people's music. So, King of the Mountain, he was on, and he's on, a couple of the other songs too. I'm Alive, he's credited for, right? And same as with All Night. I mean, those are far from any kind of masterpieces, I'm sure, but still, they're his contributions to the songs. I mean, the other guys like Jean Bouvier there. I mean, he again, he's more of a musical contributor, I think. I mean, he also played bass, don't forget, on a couple of the songs on this record for Gene for a while, whether he was uninspired or he was out doing a movie or who knows what he was doing at that time. But there's there's an example of a writer who contributes more than just writing music. He actually played it too, right? So that's a interesting thing. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Alan Schwartzberg is credited for doing some additional drumming stuff on this too, which is kind of interesting because, you know, I wonder what Eric Carr couldn't have done that he did. You know what I mean? It just kind of boggles my mind always. But again, this is another one of those records where I love it. Everything is good. I mean, it's the first record with Bruce Kulick on it too, right? And I think his guitar playing is stellar on this. I love his guitar playing. And I think, if anything, his playing helped with some of these songs. I mean, Tears Are Falling, the guitar solo is one of the best guitar solos he's done on that song. You know, Who Wants to Be Lonely is a really great song, and all his guitar playing in that is awesome too. So I think the songwriters, I think more so on this record than Animalize, the co-writers did have a little bit more of a better stamp on the songs than the previous ones.
Yeah, that I would have to agree with that, and I'd also have to say that the songs that Desmond Child co-wrote on this album are better than the songs that he co-wrote on the previous album. You know, just because of King of the Mountain.
Oh,
kind of trumps
sorry,
everything.
Can I just say one thing? This is why I ran out. I got this book because I got this. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because we were talking about the Howard Rice thing, right? And it says here, Gene said, for any way you slice it, I was living at the time in Beverly Hills with Diana Ross. Across the street from her home lived Howard Rice, an engineer and a writer. He later wound up writing and producing a big hit with Patti LaBelle, New Attitude. Howard showed me some chordal patterns, which I liked very much. I sat down and wrote the lyrics and melody very fast. So that was his involvement.
So that was a very polite credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably amazing. what 5% maybe. All right, let's move on to Crazy Nights and Crazy Nights
Dream.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but Crazy Nights for me is an album that I once said to someone when we were talking about Motley Crue of all bands that if Theater of Pain had the sonic sound of Shout at the Devil, it would have been one of the best albums ever. So just take that for what it is. If Crazy Nights had the sonic signature of Asylum, it would have been a damn sight better than it was. So either people think I'm a complete idiot or I am a complete idiot. So Crazy Nights, we bring in some new songwriters here. Adam Mitchell really comes back in with, co-writing with Paul. And you get Desmond showing up. You've got Bruce Turgon showing up, and David Sigerson, and what is it, Peter Diggins? Diggins? I gotta look that up. Yeah, Peter Diggins. So,
yeah.
Again, it's Mitch Weissman, and for the first
Diane
time, Diane Warren. So I'm going to start at the bottom there with Mitch Weissman and Thief in the Night. That should have been on Animalize, but obviously it had been used already in '84 for Wendy Williams. But of the songs that Mitch co-wrote, I think Thief in the Night is probably the best for my taste. Really good. It's got the atmosphere. And again, it's hard to decipher what exactly his role is, but for a co-written song, that's the best of the Unmasked era for his contributions to the band. Diane Warren, I think she really brings a whole new perspective to the band because, she hadn't really started her explosion in the songwriting world at that point, but you see what she's like kind of bringing to the picture on Turn on the Night. It's the anthemic song that Paul Stanley loves, but it's got a songcraft to it that's really excellent. So that's another one of the standout songs on this album because no matter who's co-writing for me, I just can't get past the high-pitched vocals, and it really ruined the album for me when I went and bought it and listened to it. I'm still recovering from it all these years later. Ken, what's your thoughts on the co-writing on Crazy Nights?
I think the co-writing is great, and across the board except for No, in my opinion. But everything else, they're all pretty darn good, well-written songs, complete. So it's really a production issue with this album. The way the production, like you said, the high-pitched vocals, which is probably a copying of other lead singers that are singing in that octave.
Well, Jim, who's this? What's his name? Jim Gillette.
Jim Gillette, yeah.
Jim Gillette,
Nitro. Yeah.
Yeah. So, there was no need to do that. I don't know what the thought there was. I guess it was just another, we're following again, as with the sound of the album, as we're following again. So, but the song quality, they're great. Like you said, the Diane Warren song, Turn On a Night, that should have been probably the first single off the album. It may have done better had that come out first. Again, these, like I said, with Desmond Child, he wrote 3 songs. I think one of the songs out of the 3 are his best one. So again, you get a hit out of it. Reason to Live, 33% again, like I said earlier on another album. So it's good to write a few with them because you're going to get something pretty good. But again, the craftsmanship, they took time on this one to write good songs to try to make a big hit album. But I think the production brought it down.
They took their time and still came up with Bang Bang You. Yeah, mercy.
Yeah, but it could have been better had it been produced,
Yeah. Could have been better left on the cutting room floor, that one. That's one of the few songs that has always made me cringe from the moment I heard that at 15, 16 years old to this day. That's right up there with Read My Body. So
more than No No No.
No, I don't mind. That's just like it's. I'm oblivious to it. It just like happens, it finishes, and disappears into the ether. Bang Bang You actually makes me have a physical response, and it's usually, grabbing for the skip button.
Well, yeah, when it comes up on a playlist, no, I go, yeah, no, and it goes.
That's not on a playlist for me.
Mark, what's your thought on the co-writing on Crazy Nights?
Well, I think it's interesting that this album had 7 co-writers on it, which was quite a large amount when you think about it for a record. I mean, that to me would have been a warning sign about this record, because it seems like the more writers you bring in, the more you distill the original formula out of it, right? When you just leave it between Gene and Paul, there, then you have the heart, the essence of the Kiss songwriting, right? But with that said, I mean, Crazy Nights is a great song, so Adam Mitchell should get full kudos for that. As for I'll Fight Hell to Hold You, I don't mind that song. It's one of the more stronger ones, and it was smart that they made them 1 and 2 on the record, I think, because it starts off good, because before you know it, you're into Terrible Land with Bang Bang You and No No No, right? Which No No No, if anything, does have some of Bruce Kulick's more acrobatic-y guitar playing in it, which, kind of shows him off to be a player of great skill and technique, which is something that was, pretty important during that time of the 80s. People all wanted to show that they had a great guitar player in their band. So, that's just like Kiss, to make sure that they're not left out in those departments, right? So, but the thing that I found that's interesting about this is that this record, they waited a year just to use Ron Nevison to do this album, right? So they had all the songs written, and in the book here that I just showed you a couple of seconds ago, there he even mentions in there that he considers the failure of this record his fault more than he points it on the songs, because right here it says in his own words that he says, he goes, maybe the record was too soft sounding, maybe people expected Kiss to sound more rock. Maybe that's my fault. It was a gamble to make them more pop. I had just had success with Ozzy, with Shot in the Dark from The Ultimate Sin. I was rolling on a high and thought, what the heck? It worked with everybody else, but I was confident in the songs. So right there, obviously, he was pretty confident in the songwriting and figured that what he did to the songs was what hurt the record. I kind of am 50-50 with that, because I don't care if you brought in Bob Ezrin or if you brought in Bob Rock, you ain't going to make No 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 good. Neither Bang Bang You. They're still going to turn out to be turds floating in a toilet when it's all said and done, right? So I think that the songwriters that were involved in this record, the very many of them, they all chipped in what they could, I think. I mean, Turn On the Night is one of my favorite songs on this record. and Diane Warren's a co-writer on that. And from what I remember, I'm pretty sure that Paul had nothing but good things to say about that song, right? So, but yeah, I mean, the people that are involved in this most of the time are people that now I get the feeling they want to work with. It's not that these people are being forced onto them, I don't think, right? So,
yeah, this album's, it's a whole bunch of different choices that the band made, and the co-writers did their jobs on this album.
Yeah.
No matter what we say about, no, and that's all Kiss members. But Bang Bang You, that's obviously they had an idea about what they wanted in the song, or else it wouldn't have gone on the album. So, sonically, you listen to the demos, and they're a hell of a lot better than the fully produced, versions. But Ken, have I asked you?
I already.
I'm losing track. Lonnie.
You're talking about Crazy Nights and the co-writers on it. I think Adam Mitchell, despite what we talk about the production on Crazy Nights, that's a whole show in itself. We can talk about that, but the co-writes that Adam Mitchell contributed with Crazy Nights and I'll Fight Hell to Hold You, When Your Walls Come Down, I think are really done well. I think Adam Mitchell really, this is maybe some of his best co-writes with Kiss or on those three songs. And I really like I'll Fight Hell to Hold You, and I was really surprised that wasn't chosen as a single off the album, and I think Mark made a good point where Crazy Nights right in the I'll Fight Hell to Hold You are really good, a 1-2 punch for the band to open up the album with. I mean, it's not Detroit Rock City, King of Nighttime World, but it's a really good 1-2 punch to open up the album. And I really like both those songs, and I think Adam Mitchell, and I don't know how much he contributed to them, but I mean, he's on both of them, and I think that those are really good songs on the album. Thief in the Night, I like actually like the Wendy O. Williams version better than the Kiss version of that song. It's I don't know. And I guess it's just the production off of Crazy Nights, and you gotta remember it's 1987, and what other bands were doing, and it's Kiss trying to be relevant and be in with what's in with MTV, and bands like Def Leppard and Bon Jovi getting a lot of attention at the time. The rawness of like a Guns N' Roses hadn't really hit yet. Appetite was released in July of '87, so that really hadn't caught on or anything. And but the flashy hair and videos like that, even you look at the videos for Crazy Nights are awful, but that's something else too. But I think Adam Mitchell really shines for me on this album, though, as far as the co-writes go. And Desmond Child with My Way, but he did have Reason to Live, so I'll give Desmond Child
Reason to Live and Turn on the Night. I mean, for me, those in terms of songs are far better. I mean, Crazy Nights.
Second place for a co-writer on the album, but Adam Mitchell did a great job, in my opinion. Had Crazy Nights come out maybe like in '89, like after the shift, almost the shift going away from the hair metal, because you saw that Motley Crue had gotten away from it by the time Dr. Feelgood had come out. They've gotten away from that flashy look after Appetite had come out, and the shift kind of happened away from all that hair and stuff. I think Crazy Nights, had it been released in '89 or something like that, or maybe '90 under a different producer, we could look at that album totally. I think a lot of people could look at the album totally different. No, I'm with you that you're not going to polish. No, you're not going to polish Bang Bang You into hits. But I think some of the singles and some of the tracks that we talked about, like Reason to Live or like Crazy Nights or like Turn on the Night, could have been a little edgier and could have given it a lot more punch, and we could have just look at that album in a different light. So, but Adam Mitchell and Desmond Child for me on that album, first co-writers.
Agreed.
I'd like to say that this album would be a great Heart album Never
Yeah.
a great Kiss album. If
Right.
you listen to it, I could hear, I'll fight hell. I could hear, Ann Wilson singing that. She could. I mean, that would be
Oh, yeah.
great fit one for her to belt. Reason to Live sounds like a heart song at that period of time. It's just.
And he did work on that.
It's
too,
a hard.
right?
It should be. Yeah, exactly. He produced their Heart
Yeah.
album. So yeah, it's a Heart album in my opinion, not a Kiss album.
Yep. All right, let's go all the way down the drain. Smashes, thrashes, and hits. At least there's only 2 songs to talk about, and Desmond Child co-wrote them both. Diane Warren, of course, gets the third credit on You Make Me Rock Hard, which for me is the better of the 2 songs, but that's really not saying an awful lot. Pretty dire songs. I just don't see the passion or the reason. It's like, let's write a song. Okay, it's written. Let's record it. Okay, here you go, Polygram. Put out that greatest hits package. Done. Okay, bye. It really strikes me as rushed, low quality. Let's Put the X in Sex is by far one of the worst Kiss songs ever. It's in that same category with Read My Body and Bang Bang You and Nothing Can Keep Me From You. For me, those are the 4 evil songs. There's just, for me, there's nothing to say about these 2. These are ones with Desmond Child that don't work. The one that has Diane Warren works a little bit better than the other. So
Really?
For me,
Do you like Rock Hard better than Let's Put the X in Sex?
Yeah. Collecting bootlegs and all of that stuff. When I heard that 8-year-old girl singing Let's Put the X in Sex, I was never able to listen to that song again without feeling filthy. Feeling dirty, feeling it's just wrong. The song was wronged on so many levels. So parents, please don't let your children sing Let's Put the X in Sex ever.
And then they put that on didn't they put that 8-year-old girl singing that on either The Second Coming or on the MTV video? I've seen it's on one of those too. Also,
yeah, and
why are you showcasing that?
I already didn't like the song, but that just pushed it over the edge in terms of. I never, ever, ever want to hear that song again. It's just too awkward and wrong. Ken, these 2 songs. What are your thoughts?
Well, again, I would have said if they did a third song, they would have gotten their hit. Third song with Child on this. They just need to write one more. They would have gotten a hit off of this album.
1 out of 3.
But the 2, it's the 66%. No good. So Let's Put the X in Sex. Yeah, I never liked the song so much, and You Make Me Rock Hard, not that either. So I wish they would have just left them off of this thing, and just give us maybe a couple more classic Kiss songs to throw on there. So yeah, it was a bad attempt. Nothing else good to say about it.
I mean, if you think about it, the previous year they'd said that they recorded 12 songs for Crazy Nights, and the 12th one is Are You Always This Hot? Why wasn't that? If it was fully produced, fully ready to go, all of that, why didn't they just put that on instead of having to record?
I just love that title.
Yeah.
So,
cheese that is.
I don't get it. Mark,
well,
can anyone say anything nice about these 2 songs? That's the challenge.
Well, you're going to get a big X from me on that, but because I'm telling you, this album really, really bothers me in every way, even beyond the 2 songs. I mean, I've never liked this record. The fact that it's their highest selling record of the last 20 years now really bothers me even more. But I mean, it's just terrible. I mean, the best way to put it is exactly what it says right here. X and Sex wound up to be a second-rate version of Addicted to Love by Robert Palmer. Working at that point with Desmond Child and Diane Warren, who were both brilliant writers, I think we crossed a dangerous line into kitsch. Now, I think that's 100% true. This song is horrible. And he even says here, too, Paul, saying that this song was written 3 days before going into the studio. So obviously there was no real effort put into these songs to write 2 songs in 3 days like that. They probably just slapped it together, went in there, recorded it, and that was that. And I mean, honestly, I've never liked these songs. I mean, I remember when I got this on cassette years ago when it first came out, it lasted a week and it was gone. I mean, what really bothered me about it too, besides those two songs, were how they remixed some of the other songs. I just thought it was just like, ugh, I just didn't like the way they sounded. I'm like, what are you doing messing with this? I mean, Double Platinum was light years better than this album, in my opinion. I just, just didn't like it. I didn't like that they'd made Eric sing Beth as well. I mean, as much as he did a good job on it, whatever. Just this record, I hate it. I don't like it. And Desmond Child, I'm sure he tried to do his best that he could with this, but it's shit. I'm sorry. I can't put it any other way than that. I mean, it's just horrendous.
It's a hot take.
All right, Lonnie. Last chance to say something nice.
The one I can say one thing about the album itself is that the album came out in '88, and it was actually my first exposure to some of these songs, like Deuce and Strutter and songs like that I hadn't had yet, because it's still the '80s and I'm like 8 or 9 years old at this time when Smash the Thrashes and Hits comes out. So I hadn't heard the original versions of Deuce or Strutter or Calling Dr. Love, for that matter. It was my first exposure to a lot of those songs. And maybe there's something wrong with being 8 or 9 years old and I get an album and it kicks off with Let's Put the X in Sex and You Make Me Rock Hard. But as much as I complain sometimes about my mom on this show, she did let me listen to whatever I wanted to, so I will give her that. And maybe she shouldn't have let me listen to those two songs, because I'm not going to say anything nice about those two songs, because they are god awful, and I can't listen to them. They're basically unlistenable, and it's Paul. And you watch those videos, and it's Paul Stanley without even a guitar. Paul Stanley is the front man, and it's like they hadn't gotten it yet. Why are you? I don't know. The videos themselves are more bothersome to me than the songs, because the videos are just atrocious. And the way the band is showcased in those videos, it's hard. In 1988, it's hard not to make fun of those videos when they came out, because I know I talk about Guns N' Roses quite a bit on the show lately, but Sweet Child of Mine had hit, and Guns N' Roses looked really cool in Sweet Child of Mine by late '88 when that video was really big. And here they come out in the flashy color still, like they're a couple years behind. You know what I mean? They just look, and they're singing "Let's Put the X in Sex" and "You Make Me Rock Hard," and it looked so forced and so put on, and it's just awful.
Yeah, it's
so
called,
many levels.
It's called Chasing
Stop
Trends.
It. I don't want to see it, jackass.
Look at that.
So bad.
Accept it. This is Kiss history right there. You want to look at it. Look at it.
No.
Look.
I wish I could turn off your screen.
Accept it. This is what they were doing. Accept it.
So bad.
Oh, that is awful. But, that was the 80s, and they were chasing trends, and they were, sticking with Desmond, riding with him, hoping for that elusive hit. Maybe thinking, well, Crazy Nights went to number 4 in England. Well, that's a good reason not to write with Desmond Child ever again. If you get a hit song in England, you're doomed in the 80s. So,
it's just
70s, you're fine, because that would have meant Slade. But 80s, no. All right, let's get out of that one and get into something that's probably a little bit more of a mess, and that is...
Doesn't get much better.
Hot in the Shade. And I'm straight out of the bat, Bob Halligan Jr. Fantastic writer in that he wrote "Take These Chains" for Judas Priest.
I know where we're going with this.
And then he wrote "Read My Body" for Kiss. I mean, Bob, can we please have you co-write something like "Take These Chains" for Kiss? And he did, Rise to It, which... I remember I was living in Singapore at the time this album came out, and I was actually able to find an import of this, and I was thrilled. First song, okay, it's got a little bit of acoustic intro.
Cinderella.
Cinderella. Very long, cold winter-ish. So, and then it gets into the song, and it's like, okay, this is great. Paul Stanley's got someone who's this Halligan guy. I mean, I didn't really make the connection back then with the Judas Priest. And I was like, okay, it's a little bit different than the normal stuff Paul writes. I liked it. So, from that perspective, I was like, okay, thrilled. And then, of course, we got down the 800 miles on side 1 to the 29th track, and Read My Body comes up. And then I was like, Bob Halligan, what the hell are you doing to this band? You start off so strongly. Oh, that's the non-black and white version of the video.
Yeah. Rise to it.
So Bob Halligan, I mean, maybe like Ken has said with, Desmond Child, that if he needed to write a few more songs on the album, and there would have been some better ones. But Rise to It is a good contribution. And then we have co-writers like Tommy Thayer.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I like both his songs, so fuck you, Tommy haters.
Hot take again.
But I think the most important thing on Hot in the Shade is Vinnie Poncia coming back into the picture. Obviously, he had great pop sensibilities that really benefited what the band were going for with Dynasty and Unmasked. And I think they do it again here. But what the difference is that the material just isn't good enough to begin with, and it kind of neuters it down and makes it safe and kind of too poppy and too kind of like calculated for what it is, so it doesn't really work. So it was nice to see him back on there, but none of those songs that he co-wrote are particularly good.
Silver Spoon, Cadillac Dreams, King of Hearts.
Yeah, Somewhere Between Heaven and
Somewhere
Hell.
Between Heaven and Hell.
Loves a slap in the face.
There's something there. On all of those songs, there's something there, but it's not there. And that's the whole problem with the whole album, no matter who's co-writing, with the exception of Forever, which is just Michael Bolton. Absolutely fantastic. If I'm going to pick any song out of the catalog that has someone completely disassociated with the band, not a producer, not an insider, a friend, this is just one of the best co-written songs ever recorded by Kiss. So, let's try and give someone else a chance to talk about this album. Mark, what's your thoughts?
Well, I only have a few things to say about this record. I mean, number one, there's a lot of co-writers on these records. But I mean, the one thing about this record that's really hurt it is the fact that there are so many songs. And this is a direct result of the problem between CD and vinyl. As soon as you brought in the medium of CD, gone was the 45-minute album where you had to sit there, write 15 songs, say, okay, you know what? Now I'm forced to have to think for a second. What are my best songs here? And we got to keep those ones on here. Because when you had 70 to 80 minutes, all of a sudden it's like, hey, we can write 17, 18 songs and put them all on now because there's no way that we have any reason to take them off now because they can fit on a record, which is, I think, exactly what they did here. And again, I mean, Vinnie Poncia, I was happy to see him back on here too. There's always something about Vinnie Poncia when he works on stuff that I always get this feeling of like, it's like a comfortable sofa almost, where you're sitting and you're like, you know what, this is familiar territory. I don't hate these songs. I don't love them, certainly. They're nothing like Dynasty. Like that to me was a much better Vinnie Poncia record. But, there's just something about his songs where I don't totally dismiss them, I mean, obviously, Read My Body is easily the most hideous Kiss song in the catalog ever written. I mean, their poor attempt to pour some sugar on me, obviously, on here. It's just terrible. But again, there were things that were going against them on this record. Again, they rode with a lot of people. I think they tried to dip their fingers into too many different areas with this. They should have just had a direction, stuck with it, kept it to 8 songs, 9 songs. And, I understand that money was a little tight and their situation with management, other things might have been a little hairy-carry at this point. But, they admitted it themselves. They found a good demo studio to record this in. And Gene was quoted as saying that he was constantly bickering and arguing with people to buy cheap tape so that they didn't have to spend so much money on the recording of this. And it shows. I mean, if you start buying cheap garbage 24-track 2-inch tape, on top of poor songs, now you have poor tape and everything else on top of it, and you don't even have a producer. It's just Gene and Paul again. This record was doomed from the get-go. I mean, sure, they're lucky that they had Forever and Rise to It and Hide Your Heart and stuff like that. Those are great songs. And maybe because they wrote so many songs, they lucked out and a couple of those worked out for them. But I'm telling you, if they would have kept those 3, cut out a bunch of the other ones and kept it to 9 songs and really sat down with some of these co-writers, we know that Vinnie Ponce is a good co-writer as well as a producer. Why didn't they get him to produce the record? Michael Bolton with Stanley writing Forever was just magic, so that's great, right? But I mean, Tommy Thayer, Betrayed is a great song. That for once he had a good song. But I mean, sit down, focus on these things, and just really, hammer it out, and there you go, right? I just think that there's just way too much here. And I don't know many people who can sit through this record top to bottom and listen to it from beginning to end without any interruption. That's my final analyses.
Lonnie, what's your thoughts on it? I know, actually, before you say that, I remember in the rock magazines, that were coming out before this album, them talking about why they brought Vinnie back in, was, to tighten up the songwriting and help them in that area, make the material more accessible. But obviously it did not work. So, Lonnie, thoughts?
Well, again, like Crazy Nights, there's a ton of co-writers. And I guess it's Kiss really trying to find a way to get a hit, and they did get one with a co-writer with Michael Bolton. But you have Desmond Child, who gives them Hide Your Heart, which is great, but he also gives them Love Me to Hate You. Back to Ken's formula, you can't get too many good ones in a row from him. And you have Sean Hannigan with Rise to It, which is good, but he gives you Read My Body, which is awful. Adam Mitchell is a co-write with Little Caesar, which is not very good.
God awful.
Tommy Thayer gives them Betrayed and Street Giveth and Street Giveth Taketh Away, which are decent. Had been produced better, might have been really great. But Vinnie Ponce, you guys were singing Vinnie Ponce's praises, and I have a problem with that because he gave them Somewhere Between Heaven and Hell, Cadillac Dreams, King of Hearts.
I love Cadillac
Silver
Dreams.
Spoon. You do?
Yes.
And Love's a Slap in the Face. 5 songs that are not. And Mark said, well, maybe they got him to produce. I think he did enough. I don't need any more from Vinnie Ponce on this record. I'm sorry. I don't need any more Vinnie Ponce than what he gave me on this record. It's not good. To quote Donald Trump, Vinnie Ponce was not doing well on this album. Everything Trump is not doing well. But it's too much, and part of the problem too, Mark hit on that, is that all of a sudden you could put 75 minutes worth of music on a CD, and just because you can put 75 minutes on a CD doesn't mean you should. And yeah. I think that Hot in the Shade is a perfect example of that. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And had you gotten rid of some of these shit songs like a Read My Body, like a Silver Spoon, crap like that, and condensed it down to about 9 or 10 songs, get rid of Little Caesar, get rid of Boomerang, and get some shit on the album, it may not leave as bad of a taste in your mouth as it does. Get rid of some of these other co-writers. If you take one Desmond Child song and take Hide Your Heart and leave off Love Me to Hate You, you take Rise to It, but leave off Read My Body. You take some of those co-written songs, but leave off others, and condense it down to about 9 or 10 songs. We might just like we were talking about Crazy Nights. If you had a different producer, you might think, or had it come out in 1989 with a different producer and an edgier sound. Had you take Hot in the Shade and leave off some of these co-written songs and condense it down to 9 or 10 songs, we might think differently of Hot in the Shade.
Yeah, and if Hide Your Heart hadn't been released by 18 different bands around the same time, if it had only been a Kiss song, they might have had a big album.
And by your former lead guitarist.
Yeah, that just sapped, some of that song's energy. I mean, they could have had 2 good singles off that, because obviously Rise to It didn't work, but, Hide Your Heart, when all the energy's gone with, everyone else who'd recorded it. Ken, what's your take on it?
Yeah, well, where Crazy Nights was overproduced, this album is underproduced. And yes, it's a bunch of more demo form that they're trying to clean up, and it didn't clean up enough. In my opinion, they should have, shortened the album for sure. I think they should have dropped the last 4 songs, plus Read My Body. And then that would have been a more solid album that would have went over a lot better as maybe a better rated album in Kiss fans wise. But yeah, Poncia didn't really help much in the songwriting thing. I do like you, Julian, the Thayer songs that with Simmons are great. I think that really is a good combination there. Just well done songs. The Stanley Bolton thing was pretty lucky, I think, that they got somehow that happened. And maybe saved it, because it could have been a lot worse had that not been on there. And so, and you got the Halligan, the Child thing. Of course, we know the Child thing that we've talked about before. It's hit or miss with him. It's more, to me, it's more not songwriting. I mean, there's some decent songs on there, but if they just trimmed the fat to the best 10 songs, and then it would have been, and they produced it better, it would have gone over well, I think.
Yeah, right now it really is, it's not even underproduced, it's almost unproduced, I've always felt that one of the press releases that came out in advance was that Something Wicked This Way Comes is going to be on this instead, and that would have been a far better song to have included. So, it's probably the most hodgepodgey album of the 80s. I mean, we know that. It didn't translate into a great selling album, even having a number 8 hit, but it did at least allow them their biggest tour of the, that era. Obviously they didn't start until 1990, but 127 dates. It was kind of the road back for the band. As bad as the album is, as uninspired as the co-writing is in many cases on all the songs. So, we're gonna do one more album in this episode because time is going on, and we're gonna finish up with Revenge. And Lonnie, I'm just gonna go straight to you for this one.
All right, I'll take the reins. Well, Revenge, you have return of Vinnie Vincent with three co-writes: Unholy, I Just Wanna, and Heart of Chrome. Bob Ezrin, obviously, is back after a hiatus from Kiss. And Ezrin gives him co-writes with Tough Love, Take It Off, God Gave Rock and Roll to You, Every Time I Look at You, and Paralyzed. So Bob is all over the album. And Heart of Chrome, too. Bob has a co-write on Heart of Chrome as well. So Vinnie, Bob, and Paul Stanley on Heart of Chrome. But, Bob Ezrin, to me, he produced my 2 favorite Kiss albums with Destroyer and Revenge, and one of Julian's favorites with The Elder. So, I'm not gonna criticize. You're not gonna get a lot of criticism out of me from Bob's perspective, and I think that Vinnie did a great job as well with Unholy. I don't think anyone. Julian didn't really care for Unholy, though, do you, Julian?
Not particularly.
Yeah, I didn't think so. But I think Vinnie did and I know you don't care for I Just Want to. You criticize that. We've gone back and forth on that too. But I think that Bob did a great job not only co-writing with the band, but also producing the album and making it sound. And no one, whether you like the songs on it or not, I think we all agree that the production on Revenge is the best produced album that Kiss had in quite some time, maybe since Michael James Jackson with Lick It Up, that it sounds the edgiest and sounds how Kiss, in our opinion, should sound on a album release. So for me, though, on this album, co-writing definitely goes to Bob, even more so than Vinny, just because of the number of tracks Bob has his hands on, including Every Time I Look at You, which isn't a rocker, but it's still a great track and it sounds great on the album. But at the same time, we've all agreed too that it sounds even better on MTV Unplugged.
Yeah, and that's a great thing. This is kind of like the heavyweight matchup of co-writers, Vinnie Vincent versus Bob Ezrin. But I'm sorry, Bob Ezrin totally wins, hands down. Just because I don't like Unholy and I don't particularly care for I Just Wanna, But let's not forget about Jesse Damon and Scott Van Zandt and of course Kane Roberts. But they're kind of like minor players in some essence on this album. I'm not a big fan of Take It Off either. Okay.
I know.
Bob is just there, and I think he does exactly what he does on every other Kiss album or every Alice Cooper album, that he just makes things perfect. He cuts out the fat from songs. So you disagree? All right, tell me why.
All right, come on, out with it.
Okay, I might disappoint some people with this, but honestly, I'll agree with one thing. This is the best sounding Kiss record, production-wise, that they've had in a long, long time. And that's you come to expect with Bob Ezrin. He's that kind of a guy. But what you also expect from Bob Ezrin is this is the guy, when they did Destroyer, that corralled these guys together, sat them down, said, that part's not good, ditch that. That's good, let's keep that and work on that. That's not good, let's start something from scratch. Let's sit down at the piano and work on something together, and let's write some good songs. Well, where that Bob Ezrin is on this record, I don't know. Because if he allowed Spit and a lot of these other garbage songs that are on this album, then I don't know why they even paid him. Take It Off, Tough Love, Spit is crap. Like, really? Like, I mean, if Bob Ezrin got paid for this, like, really?
Who
like,
are you?
I was going to say, Mark, stop. You're making Lonnie cry.
I mean, the songs that I love on this record are like, I love Unholy. Okay, I got to admit, I love that song. It's a kick-ass. When I first saw the video, I thought, yes, this is going to be awesome. I also heard God Gave Rock and Roll to You, and I like that. I like that song too. It's really good. I thought it was one of the better songs. Went out, my friend got the record. He's playing in the band. We sat down in his place. He slapped it on his stereo. Unholy came on. We were like, yes. It was like Beavis and Butthead time. Headbanging, going nuts. Then Take It Off came on. And we're kind of like, what's this? It's kind of a little bit more tamed, a little bit more laid back. And then Tough Love came. And I was like, ooh, this is not good. What is this? And then it all started from there. But as soon as we got the Spit, the look on the face that we both gave each other when we heard that song, we were like, really? This is like Spinal Tap, okay? This is terrible. Like, this is like Big Bottoms, but like, a rewriting of it, okay? Come on, Lonnie, you got to admit it. That's
also Kiss.
Total rewrite,
it's
okay?
Kiss, though, Mark.
But
Kiss isn't lyrically... They aren't lyrical geniuses here.
And hang on. Domino, I'll give credit. I don't mind Domino. It's not a bad song. It's nothing great. It's just like ZZ Top, but with Gene singing on it. Okay, so but then Hard to Chrome came out, and I was like, hand to the forehead again. I was like, did they just rip off their own song here? Like, isn't this Tough Love basically it's the same exact riff? That it's the same thing. Just rewrote a couple notes and then just copied it and used it in this song. Okay, I mean, I expected a lot more from a Bob Ezrin record than this. Okay, but honestly, it sounds great. Bruce's guitar playing is phenomenal. It's one of the best playing that he did. I mean, that's one of the highlights of one of the conventions I went to when I saw Bruce. He came there and he had all these little DAT tapes of the instrumental versions of these songs, and he soloed and played to them, and it was just awesome. He's great. He is the standout person on this record. I mean, the co-writers. I know that's what we're mainly talking about here. Kane Roberts, he's from Alice Cooper's band. I mean, like I said, Take It Off is not great. I mean, whoever this Van Zant guy is, I mean, maybe it's just maybe it's somebody from Spinal Tap just changed their name to hide their identity or something. But it's
Mark is full of hot takes today.
But I mean, honestly, this is a record I had high hopes for, and it started good, but to me, it just completely fizzled out, and I just found that hard to believe, considering that who was the man who produced this record. I mean, you look at Destroyer, even look at Elder, and then look at this, and you're like, man, I don't know, like what happened here? It just went from great to pretty good to just no good. And that's my 2 cents.
Ouch. Lonnie, rebuttal?
I think you're crazy. I think the songs on it are great, and I've gone with you guys before. I think the songs on there are great. I think Bob did a fantastic job producing Kiss and giving them quality songs with what he gave them, and he gave them the formula with the rocking tune and with the ballad, which was very important at the time in '92 to have a good ballad on your album. And that was a formula that you would follow, is that you would release the rocking song, and they did with Unholy. And usually you would go second with a ballad at the time, and then come back with another rocking song as your third single. But I think maybe that if there's one criticism, maybe they should have done that and followed that formula. And as much as I Just Wanna went with Every Time I Look at You as the second single, I think maybe that could have been different, and I'm surprised they didn't, especially given the success that they had with Forever. And I think it was important to them when they did Revenge to have a good ballad on there as well. But they didn't even but they waited. It was the fourth single off of there was Every Time I Look at You. Which is surprising to me because that was the formula at the time, and they had the hit with Forever. But we did our Revenge show not too long ago. But as far as co-writing goes, Bob Ezrin is fantastic. Sorry, Mark. He's fantastic on this album, and I think he really brought out the great songs that had been missing from Kiss albums on previous records.
I think he was focusing too much on his little computer company at the time there.
I think you're crazy.
Ken, before we forget about your point of view.
Here it is. Revenge and Lick It Up are probably the best two albums that were without makeup, in my opinion. Those always go 1 and 2 with me. But the production, again, like you guys said, is great on it. Fantastic production. The thing with some of the songs are maybe on Revenge are a little bit, I don't know if you would say not finished, but I guess a little corny in some fashion. But, it was Kiss. That's the way it is. I'm glad we had Vinnie Vincent back. He did a good job. I mean, I Just Wanna, that's kind of corny. But it's still a good rockin' tune, and it really rocks out. The Gene Simmons stuff, love all the Gene Simmons stuff on here. So you got, the co-write, for instance, that Damon guy, I hadn't heard of before, but, Thou Shalt Not, man, just a great song. So it would be interesting if he, had written more with Gene to see what he have come up with. Of course, the Simmons, Vinnie Vincent thing, Unholy, is great, So I like the album. There was a couple corny things on it. Yeah, you can look back and, why did they do that? But it's a pretty solid album, and I really don't skip anything on it, including Car Jam even. So it's a good album. And a lot of good co-writers. I mean, they got rid of Desmond Child is gone from this and that sort of thing, and Diane Warren or whatever. they obviously said, okay, that's not working anymore. Let's try something else. And but I think Ezrin is the MVP for at least writing. I think otherwise, other than Vincent.
Yeah, I was just looking up Jesse Damon, of course, was in Silent Rage, which was a
Okay,
band
I remember that band.
signed with Simmons Records, and they're the band that recorded a bunch of demos with Gene, and he wrote a ton of songs with him in this era. So, he also sings on the album. So, I'm just looking up some of these song titles, and Rotten to the Core.
There you go.
He did a song, Rain Keeps Falling. Love is Blind, he did a version of with him. Machine. And he stays in the picture through Carnival Souls. So, I mean, as a co-writer, it's an okay co-write, nothing spectacular, but I think it's pretty clear. Bob is the co-writer of note on this album, as would be expected. Now we have to try and do the difficult thing for all these albums that we've talked about. Who is the best co-writer of this period, 83 to 92? I'm just going to go straight for Vinnie Vincent. But, if you have to pick someone outside of the band, Vinnie's outside of the band by Revenge. So, I don't think either of his contributions are that good on the album. I think taking someone outside of the band, I've got to pick Desmond Child. He contributed the most to the band during that period, and while Ken aptly says a lot of it doesn't work, you get maybe 3 songs, you have one of them's good. It's the Gene Simmons throw it all against the wall and see what sticks effect, that at least they tried. And this was the guy who had basically made a career after being discovered by Paul Stanley, so it would have been nice for him to have brought back to Kiss the kind of success that his songs had with other bands, notably Bon Jovi, but that's just not how things work out. So, favorite song co-writer of this period, Lonnie, who are you going to go with?
I think that it's hard to deny Vinnie's contributions in this period that we're discussing, and I think you bring up a good point with Desmond Child too. As many clunkers as he may have in this period, he does have some legitimate hits that he co-wrote on the album with King of the Mountain, we discuss, and Who Wants to Be Lonely, and other good tracks like that. So I think I'd have to agree with you with Desmond Child. As much as he did produce some crap, he did produce some good songs as well. So and I put an honorable mention to Adam Mitchell. As much as we may have criticized some of his contributions, there's still some good songs that came out as well. But when you want to talk about Desmond Child too, though, we still can't get away from the fact that that I think it has to bring him down a little bit of a notch that he produced. He co-wrote on "Let's Put the X in Sexy" and "You Make Me Rock Hard." So I think it's hard to sing his praises too much at the same time.
Right, but he did not co-write "Read My Body," so all is forgiven. Mark, who's your pick?
Well, I think I'm going to go with what you guys said pretty much. I mean, as far as songs that I really liked, I mean, Adam Mitchell, I think, did a great job with a lot of songs through Kiss's catalog. But, I mean, you have to go with Desmond Child. I mean, while he wrote some bad ones, he wrote a lot of good ones. But, I mean, for me, he was there through most of that period. That's what kind of sticks with me more, is because, I mean, Vinnie was a great writer, but he was, there for Lick It Up and then didn't appear again until Revenge, right? So to me, that doesn't really qualify to me because he wasn't there for a lot of these other records through this period. There's a lot of other albums, right? So I think Desmond really did a great job through those years, through, the Asylum stuff I thought was fantastic. And, he did write some bad ones too, but those songs were really good. And he wrote a few throughout the years, but I think he was good throughout the whole this period. He was, I think, more better than he was worse, in my opinion.
Good perspective. And Ken, did I ask you? I'm totally losing track today.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. And obviously, Vinnie was in the band when we did Look It Up. and not when Revenge came out. But his songwriting is great with them. But outside the band, Desmond Child, you have to give it to him, even though 66% of the songs weren't hits.
I think the percentage is more 96%.
It's probably even. I
were.
don't know, maybe more or less. Yeah, it's probably different. But anyway, his contributions were good. I mean, they weren't bad songs. Usually, they weren't bad for the most part. They're pretty solid, and they probably enhanced or whatever. For instance, more Paul Stanley's worked with Paul Stanley's writing style pretty well. So, I'll go with Desmond Child.
Without Bang Bang You, No, Read My Body, there never would have been a reunion. Because holy shit,
Thank you.
You just look back at some of those songs and know why they went back to just doing the reunion. Because
this isn't working.
Yeah. All right, guys, that takes us through 1992. I think if we ever decide to do a part 3, hopefully Kiss will have done another studio album and actually had some external co-writers utilized for the material. But for now, we're going to leave it there. We do thank you for listening to the show. We hope you've enjoyed. Join us on Facebook or on the FAQ message board and let us know who your favorite co-writers are in the 83 to 92 period and why. Who do you think's the worst? Should there be a sniper put on the roof of a recording studio to keep away from riding with the band? It's there's a lot of pretty flowers to pick from in this bunch. But some of them are actually weeds. So
a lot of dandelions and weeds too.
Join us on the board. Thank you guys for joining me today, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we broadcast today. We hope to see you again.